What's up, guys? Welcome to Why Girlfriends English. And today we want to talk a little bit about the basics of learning a language. Specifically, do I need to learn grammar?
I don't want to.
I know. Well, if you've learned 3 languages, I've only learned 2. So I'm going to ask you, how important is learning English grammar? Or just any grammar?
Grammar is, it's super important.
Mm-hmm.
It's super important to any language learning. Language, there are basically 3 parts to every language. There's the vocabulary, there's the grammar, and there's what's called the paralanguage, which is kind of like your body language or your tone of voice or other things that kind of impact language. And so you need all 3 of them to actually succeed in communicating a message. Mm-hmm. So if you're missing one of those, it's like a 3-legged chair. And if you take one of those legs out, then you actually, the chair falls down because there's not enough support. And so grammar is incredibly important to learning language because it's one of those 3 things that you got to learn.
Right. But if I memorize the dictionary of a language, how well do you think I would be able to communicate?
Well, how well do you think a computer communicates? Because computers have really, really good dictionary knowledge, but they don't translate things really well because they go word for word.
That's true. It's really funny to type something into like
Google Translate.
And it come back very wrong. And the more times you do the same message, it's just worse and worse.
Yeah, exactly. And so the point with communication is that you have to do it in such a way that you communicate what you're meaning, not just the words you're saying. And that's what grammar is. It's not just a bunch of rules. It's about being able to understand the meaning of that person better so that you can understand what they're saying.
I kind of agree with this because when I first learned Greek, my first year of Greek was basically all vocabulary study. Like, between jobs, when I was like standing in line at the cafeteria, I would be going over flashcards because I needed to pass tests. And my test at the time, my first year of Greek, was mainly vocabulary and looking at a text and finding the words. But the trick was I also knew a lot of the passages in English already. So I would see the order of the vocabulary words in the text and I would match it with whatever I already knew in English, and then I would just guess right. The problem is when I got to my second year of Greek, I was not able to do that. And thankfully, the professor started to really focus on grammar by that point. But I think he noticed that way too many of us had only been really focusing on vocabulary.
Right.
So,
and vocabulary is necessary. A lot of people tend to focus on vocabulary, especially because it's easy and it's measurable.
Yeah,
I can feel really satisfied and happy that I memorized, 1,000 words this year, or I memorized 200 for this test. But learning grammar is less measurable, and it feels less satisfying when I can say I've memorized 1 grammar rule today. That sounds so much more just not as appealing as learning, dozens of words in one day.
That's true. But it is less measurable, but it is definitely something that's necessary to communicate meaning. Because honestly, if you translate word for word, so let's say you do memorize the English dictionary and you want to say something in your language, in our language, well, you already know the words because you memorized the dictionary. However, it could be in the wrong order. So a lot of languages are subject, object, verb. But English isn't subject, verb, object language at its base. Aside from that, we borrow lots of grammar rules actually from Greek. So the more complex our sentences get, the more we kind of lose other languages too. Because in Chinese, we never really got to complex enough sentences in our learning to be able to communicate to the caliber we can in English, obviously, because we're native speakers. Yeah. But that's just one of those things. It's like the grammar would be very helpful in learning. So, I don't know, there were some words and things that we came across in China, especially when we were studying, that was really funny because it did not sound good in English at all. Like, in the malls, all the time, you'd see those yellow signs. Okay, the floors were wet because they had been mopping. You'd see this yellow sign, and it would say in English, small heart, wet floors. Or floor wet sometimes. And it's like, small heart, take small heart, wet floors. In English, a small heart means you don't have courage. And so, because our phrase for have courage is take heart, right? Have courage, have hope, okay? And then keep going. 加油.
Yeah.
But so to see that in English was like, lack courage,
should I
have no
run
courage.
away because the floor is slippery?
Exactly. Run away. The floors are slippery.
Which is actually
But to them,
the opposite of what you want people to do on a slippery floor,
exactly.
right? You don't want them to run. You want them to walk away slowly if that's what you're wanting to do.
But in Chinese, 小心 or small heart is be careful.
Right.
Take caution. Be cautious.
Right. So sometimes when you translate things word for word, your meaning does not come through. And that's the big point with grammar, is that you don't only need right words.
Yes.
But you need right words with the right rules. Because if you don't have both of those together, at least those two together, then your meaning is not going to come across.
Right. And some of you might already know this by using words that translate. Maybe you put them in a translator, or maybe you looked them up and you liked the meaning, so you use it, but it's not a word that we commonly use, like benevolence or to begrudge. We don't use that. Those are very formal words. We don't really use them in common speech. So you would be really wasting your time and energy learning those words,
right,
when you could be learning through grammar, studying grammar structures, basic grammar structures. You could be learning a much more functional vocabulary.
Right.
So you definitely need to learn vocab and grammar together.
Yeah. Because if you don't, you're wasting time.
You're wasting so much time.
I remember having some students in China, and they would try to give themselves English names.
Yes.
And some of their names would actually translate into English, but they would be words like benevolence was one of my students' names. I wanted to be called benevolence. And it's like, that would be a really weird name. We do have names like joy, but benevolence is not one of those names.
It's not a word you want to be called, really,
no,
to be honest. It's a very formal word.
Yeah, so it's a very strange thing. So with language, it's not just about learning the words. It's about also learning the grammar. And that's the big thing that a lot of people don't really want to push. And if they do push it, they push it too far, and they learn things that are way ahead of them. Way too early.
Yeah. So and if they don't have that solid foundation in the basics, then they don't actually understand, and they waste a lot of time and effort trying to understand the intricacies of such difficult grammar, advanced grammar, when they can't really use properly the basics. And that's it is so much better, and you can sound way more fluent if you can understand the basics and utilize the basic grammar rules effectively, efficiently, and well without having to think about them. If you can do that, you're going to sound way more fluent than somebody who knows all the basic or the difficult grammar, and they use it a lot.
Yeah, they use it like a memorized phrase, and it's like, that sounds nice that you know that memorized advanced grammatical sentence, but if you try to get them to use that somewhere else, then they're at a loss.
Exactly.
The hardest question that I would ask my students in China was, why?
Yeah.
Because they could say the sentence that they had prepared beforehand, but if you try to get them a little bit more information by asking why or how, immediately they couldn't answer.
Yeah.
And part of that is, a main part of that is grammar.
Right.
But let's transition a little bit. What have you seen in other times, other places, where a person said maybe the right things, but maybe just sounded kind of weird?
Oh my goodness. Whenever I asked my students what their New Year's resolutions would be, a lot of them would say something like, I want to be fat. Or I want to be more fat. And though I would praise them on correct grammar that was correct grammar, it was just the wrong word at the end, and it had a different weight. Like, you can say things like, I want to be more fat in some context, but they didn't quite understand the weight of what they were saying either.
Yeah.
That's not something that you want to say.
Or let's play a game. Let's play a game in the comments below. I'm going to say some things in English that are direct translations of things in Chinese. And a lot of these are vocabulary that you can pick up in a dictionary, but they actually mean different things when they're word for word translated over. So, for example, words like dirt bean.
I really like that one. Or business bird.
Business bird. That's one of my favorites.
That's one of my favorites. I like that one.
Probably, though, I'll give you a hint. I'll give this one to you for free. Electric brain is gotta be my favorite Chinese word because of the meaning of it and the change of meaning of it from Chinese to English. So what is electric brain?
Electric brain is computer.
Right. And so a computer in English and a computer in Chinese actually mean very two different things. The words themselves for those objects. In Chinese, it means something that can learn or grow like a brain. But in English, a computer is just something that does math. It's a calculator.
Right.
1 + 1 = 2. And so those words mean different things. And that's amazing to me because we can't just word for word translate things.
That's true. But also something that I just realized that we were getting into is that we are using words and trying to show you that literal translation is not a great idea, that you need that grammar. But then we're using words to demonstrate that.
Right.
We're using those words because these are compound nouns. And if you don't understand how to use compound nouns in English, you can really mess up what you're trying to say.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons it's okay to use these direct literal translations as memory hooks, because dirt bean and business bird help us to remember what those words are in Chinese.
Yeah.
Because we translate them and it sounds ridiculous to us. And it's a really fun game to play with other English speakers who do not know Chinese. It's really fun to have them guess what that means. However, we have to know how to use those in Chinese grammar in order to not mess up our meaning when we're trying to speak Chinese.
Right.
So,
and it's not just in Chinese either.
It's
in our language, in English, we also have phrases that can be seen as different depending on what kind of grammar or weight you give those words. So, for example, the very classic one that we see all the time here in America is signs in a neighborhood that say slow children playing. 3 words right on top of each other.
No punctuation.
Slow children playing. And depending on your grammar, what grammar you're using for those things, and what those words actually do, depends on the meaning of that phrase.
It's true. So you could have, there's so many jokes about this in America because our signs do not use punctuation. So slow children playing could be slow children. Are the children like playing slowly? Or are they slow themselves? Like, are they just slow, I don't know, just mentally? Or are they slow physically? Or is it slow down, children are playing, like there's children around? That's what it really means. But to be proper in grammar for that, you should have slow, comma, children are playing.
And it makes it, that one's an easy one because it's
3 words, it's command.
Yeah, it's very nice. But another thing that people use all the time in America and in English are idioms.
Idioms, yeah. So an idiom is a phrase that does not make sense outside of its immediate context. Like if you just look at the words, if you just look at the grammar itself, it's not going to make sense. So a good example of this is get your ducks in a row. So if Josh is just really struggling in life and things are falling apart, he doesn't have time for things, he's late to everything, I might look at Josh and say, dude, get your ducks in a row. Right? And what would that mean? It
would mean that I have to get my life in order, basically. I need to get some things arranged because my life is kind of a mess. And even more than just like, my life is a mess, sometimes you can even use it for if a person's maybe about to die and they're trying to make some arrangements for when after they're dead, that they can easily pass things on to their kids or something. That's getting your ducks in a row. But if you word for word translate it, that idiom becomes very strange. Why do I care about ducks? I'm more worried about my English at this point.
Exactly. And so it's very important to have your grammar, to understand your grammar and to have it taken care of. And honestly, if you're at the point right now where you have been studying English for like 12 years, we've had so many students like that, 10, 12, 15 years, and they still cannot speak. If that is you, I suggest what you do is you take those basic grammar structures that you've already memorized. A lot of our students before have memorized so much, but they don't use it. Okay, you need to use it, but a great exercise will be to write down different ways to say the same thing, because one of the first signs to us as English teachers that someone is a beginner or that they self-study or they only study at home is that they only say one way. They only speak things one way. Okay, so maybe they say something like, "Hi, my name is Amber and I am fine today. How are you?" Or, "How are you?"
I am good, thank you. And you?
Yeah. So what those are is those are nice because they're memorized phrases. But if you cannot say that one thing in a different way, then it shows me that you have not actually mastered the basic structures.
Yeah.
All the different ways to say things all use very similar structures in English, but you need to be able to say things in different ways.
And just using a personal example, I remember the first time I went into a McDonald's after I did a ton of study about how to order things and how to say things and about how to give money and how to take money. And I remember walking into that McDonald's and I said, "Hey, I want a hamburger and some fries and a Coke." And I felt so happy because I said it. It was my first time. And the person started talking back to me. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. And they were actually asking me, in hindsight,
small or large?
Yeah, more options about those same things. And I, memorizing just certain phrases, I couldn't actually respond back. So I gave my meaning to the person, but communication is what we call a two-way street. That it goes this way, but it also comes back. And I need to be able to be prepared for that. And that's what our students struggle with a lot.
Yeah.
And so with grammar, with English, we have to learn not only the words, but also the rules that come with those words.
Yes.
And like you were saying, a lot of times those rules, they build on each other, on top of one another.
So instead of saying like, but if you're ordering at a restaurant, I want this, this, and this, you need to also be able to say, "Could you please get me this, or do you happen to have this, or I would like to purchase this," or something like that. There's so many ways to say that basic thing, to communicate that basic meaning. So if you can like think of 3 or 4 or 5 different ways to say something with your basic vocabulary, you're on the right track with learning English grammar.
Right. And because if you struggle, especially with some presentations or some PPTs, as we would say in China, if you struggle with actually speaking, especially, then you need to be able to have a lot of different ways for you to say it. I've coached a lot of people through taking the TOEFL and the IELTS, and that was one of the biggest things I did, is that they would prepare their page, their sheets that they would get ready for, and they would think that their sheet is perfect, their grammar inside it is even good. But then if I ever pressed them and said, "But what does that mean? Can you explain that to me?"
In a different way,
they couldn't do it.
Right.
And it's because they had it built on top of their own grammar foundation. They've just skipped right to the top. And so they don't actually know from the bottom up. They just know, I know how to say, "Hello, my name is," and then I also know how to
I want to be a
my future plans for my job is this. And so they know their future tense and they know the introduction, but they don't know anything in between.
Just a dangerous place to be when you're trying to communicate and learn a language.
Right. So the whole point is grammar important? Is a definite yes, but you need to do it step by step.
With vocabulary and with paralanguage, like body language and culture in the mix with it.
Right.
So it's very, very important. At Wygo Friends English, that's what we're going to be doing. So we definitely have some different opportunities that we're putting together to help you guys be able to practice these different things together. For example, on our Facebook page, we're going to be putting together like short little videos of different grammar tips and ways to do that, or inflection and how to do that, or body language. We're going to mix it up for you guys so you get a little bit of everything all together at once. And it might feel slower to learn this way, but it is much more thorough and it's much more solid. We're building a foundation for you to be able to soar.
Right. And so if you guys have any questions or concerns, or if you have any funny translation things or problems that you've seen
Or something
in your
from your
country
language
or
that
from
sounds
your language,
funny.
go ahead and put that in the comments below, and we'll be creating more content for you guys in the coming future. So,
For sure. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
bye.